President Trump has been in office for nearly 6 months now. How would you rate his administration so far?
I would give him an A+. What a strange anachronism. A leader who actually does what he says he's going to do. He told us he would seal the border. He has. He told us that he would deport, I think it's closer to 30 million illegals, and we've begun to do that. He told us that he would negotiate tariff deals that were in the best interest of not just our trading partners, but also in our best interest. That's doing that. The Dow is at an all-time high. The inflation is low. The dollar is stable. He's working very hard to convince Jerome Powell to quit playing politics and cut interest rates so we can get more affordable housing in the country. I think he's doing an amazing job. He's done away with the DEI policies that were destroying our military. We no longer have men playing in women's sports. I mean, across the board, I think he's doing an amazing job. Are there a few things that should be done differently? Yes, but even Babe Ruth struck out once in a while.
And he's also been vindicated on a number of different things all across the board. You have the New York Times just the other day admitting that what they said was a conspiracy theory about the migrant gangs in the Colorado apartment complex ended up being true. You have the federal government posting a surprise surplus budget on the tariffs, so the tariff strategy has been working. What do you think? So with all the success that's been going on, and it's only been, we're just coming up on 6 months of his second term, what do you think the left's next play is?
Well, I think the Democrats and the left are in huge trouble because their party has been hijacked by a Marxist clique, as demonstrated by the recent New York City primary. I don't think they are capable of producing nominees who are moderates. The left wing in the Democrat Party is being eaten alive by the far left wing. When Chuck Schumer is considered too conservative to run their party, tells you a lot about the Democrat Party. I hope AOC runs against him, because if she does, she will beat him. The face of the Democrat Party today is AOC, Jasmine Crockett, and this neo-Marxist Muslim Jew hater, Zohran Mamdani. That is the new face of their party, and we know what their policies will get us. So while it's bad for the poor people who live in New York, I think the election of the Democrat nominee, Mamdani, is inexorable. And I think by 2028, the city will be on fire. He says that violence is a social construct. He wants to defund the police. He wants to open the jails and let everybody out. He wants to nationalize the grocery stores, but you'll only be able to buy groceries if you have a certain card, like a social credit score. So that's the face of the Democrat Party. When you look at that in the wake of the MAGA revolution, I don't buy the idea, which is normal, or I should say traditional, that our party's going to lose seats in the off-year election. It's too early to know that. It's too early to know what 2028 will look like. But if New York City is taken over by a Marxist, it will be a showcase for the entire country of what happens when you choose those types of policies.
And he's even made comments saying, which I thought was kind of out there, he even made comments saying, if companies want to flee New York and go elsewhere, he's going to find them and still find ways to tax them. So he's trying to transcend his own borders in a way and affect, if you're leaving the state. If these kinds of Democrats are now the face of the party and they're driving the bus, where do you think this bus is going to go? Do you think is the pendulum going to swing harder back to us?
Conceivably. The problem is there are no moderate Democrats to leave the party.
Yeah.
The party is, Andrew Cuomo tried to make a comeback and he crashed and burned. He's no one's idea of a conservative or even a moderate Democrat. My friends in Long Island and Westchester, they see the fact that their property values are going to skyrocket as more and more people desert New York City. It's not just the wealthy who will leave. The middle class will leave. Small business will leave. I just don't want them to come to my home state of Florida and bring their Democrat politics with me. The people complaining about Mamdani are the people who voted for Joe Biden. So don't complain, you are getting what you voted for.
So switching gears back to President Trump, he announced today a 30% tariff on the EU and Mexico. And he sent letters to other countries, giving them an August 1st deadline to negotiate tariffs. And if they were to do retaliatory tariffs, that he would match those tariffs. How do you think that's going to end up, or where do you think that's going to go?
Well, I think we already know. So far, it's worked almost perfectly. He's used the same tactic with other countries, which is why we have good tariff deals with them now. Look, he is a master negotiator. I read The Art of the Deal. I read it a long time ago. And Scott Bessent, his Secretary of the Treasury, is also a brilliant negotiator. And he's negotiating. He knows when to use the carrot, and he knows when to use the stick. So in the end, you may not remember this, but when he became president the first time, all of our NATO allies were hundreds of $millions behind in their dues to NATO. And their attitude is, well, just let the Americans pay. And he said, well, we're not paying any more until you get up to date. And then very recently, they got up to date again. So I think it's the art of the deal, and it's worked so far, and it will continue to work. Remember, all those people who said that his tariff policies would cause inflation to soar, they would cause a financial collapse. We have a surplus for the first time in decades. We're bringing in millions of dollars of tariff revenues. The Congressional Budget Office, who says the big beautiful bill would be a disaster, that the tax cuts would cause a deficit, that's what they said about Reagan's tax cuts. They were wrong. That's what they said about Kennedy's tax cuts. They were wrong. That's what they said about Trump's tax cuts in the first term. The Congressional Budget Office is always wrong. They're a bunch of liberal, green eye shade, Coke bottle glasses weirdos, and they should just close the place down.
Speaking of the big beautiful bill, do you think that the appropriations process could be used to start enacting the DOGE cuts?
There's no question. That is the place for it. People don't realize this, but under Bill Clinton and Al Gore, we essentially passed a law which allows the federal government to go into any department and say, here were your projections, here's the reality, and zero spending out. People don't realize that the president has that power because no president has used it. Trump has that power. The place to cut spending was never in the big beautiful bill. It's in these rescission bills that are now being set up. But in the meantime, USAID, for example, the slush fund of the radical left, has finally been closed down. Oh, and the people, well, we were funding foreign color revolutions, they're not too happy, but who cares?
So a lot of times we see that Trump does something, and then the public goes crazy. Sometimes even his own base, like on, the noise on X, and everyone kind of reacts very quickly. But then they come to find 24 hours later that there's, they're not in the room, they're not in the situation room, they're not in the negotiations, they're not in the talks, and they come to find that you don't know what's going on, and you have to trust President Trump that he knows what he's doing, and that he's a master class in leadership and what he's going to do. So, do you have a message for the people who kind of like have a quick reaction when Trump does something because they're not privy to what's going on behind closed doors, and they react maybe too fast to things, and you kind of have to let things play out to see what's going to happen because you're not part of the negotiation?
This actually is the theme of my remarks here tomorrow, which are people need to trust Trump. He's not a politician. He's a leader of a political movement. And he means what he says, and he says what he means. And he's had an amazing track record of being right. All these things they said he was wrong about, he's turned out to be right. He's just given us a continuation of the largest tax cut in American history. The big beautiful bill is going to turn out to be a landmark. People need to trust the president. He has more information than we do. As conservatives, we tend to be purists. We want it all. You can't always have it all. I'd be happy with 85 to 90%, and the president's delivering on issue after issue after issue.
The situation with the Epstein files, what do you think is going on with the whole Bondi?
It's a little confusing, but I don't understand really. I'm perplexed about Pam Bondi, who I know and who I like. But where's the investigation into the origins of the COVID-19 vaccination? Where's the investigations into the Chinese interference in our last 2020 presidential election, where we now know that they were shipping hundreds of thousands of fake driver's licenses into the country to be used so people could vote illegally? Where is their investigation into the New York banks that were violating the Iranian sanctions, which New York Attorney General Letitia James knew all about? Why don't we do this? President Trump should direct Pam Bondi to direct the interim U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York to unseal all of the grand jury testimony in the indictment of Jeffrey Epstein in 2019, who was indicted by the Trump administration. And while you're at it, let's also unseal the search warrants. That will establish exactly what he was doing and who he was doing it with. That's what they need to do.
What do you think the likelihood is of it happening?
Something has to give. I mean, I don't know why our Justice Department seems to be constipated, but we don't see any action on any of these major issues. I just went through 3 cases that should be pursued, and then there's the most obvious one. CIA report this week tells us essentially what John Durham's report already told us, that John Brennan, who admits to being a communist, John Brennan, who signed the visas for 4 of the 8 hijackers who attacked America on 9/11. John Brennan, who got caught red-handed spying on a Senate committee investigating his illegal use of torture. John Brennan, who pushed to include the phony Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment given to President Obama so that they could rationalize Crossfire Hurricane to try to remove a duly elected president. Why hasn't he been arrested? When are 29 FBI agents going to storm his home at 6 o'clock in the morning like they did to me? John Brennan is an arrogant criminal, and it's time, Pam, to scoop him up. And while you're at it, you might as well grab James Comey, because there is more than sufficient evidence to charge both of them. And for those who say, oh no, the statute of limitations has run out, not on the crime of treason, it hasn't.
So do you think they will be, because they've been looked into recently?
I think the public pressure now will be so great that they will be prosecuted. The other problem you have then is, if you go to D.C. where there's not a single non-political judge and where you cannot get an honest, unrigged jury, it's very hard to get convictions in D.C. Ask General Flynn, or I can tell you all about it.
So Trump has obviously been on a streak of just historic success in his first 6 months. What do you think is next on the agenda?
I don't think there's any question that we're heading into a golden age, an unprecedented age of peace, prosperity, security, justice, and law and order. Those who second-guessed the president about Iran, this was not some Bush-Cheney style, boots-on-the-ground, forever war. We went in, we conducted a successful surgical strike, we took out the nuclear weapons development program, and we withdrew. That's peace through strength. That's not neoconism. That's not Bushism. So even in that case, when many second-guessed the president, I had questions about it myself, but once the decision was made, then it's our responsibility to back the commander-in-chief 100%. And again, Trump turned out to be right.